on YouTube. So yeah, it's not a warning, it's just a statement. Considerations for general business. At the conclusion of the agenda, any items, there will be a discussion towards the end of the agenda in regards to NIWA, Bay of Plenty Regional Council and Te Maru Kaituna Authority. It's a collaboration regarding MBIE. It's a case study and proposal on transforming coastal lowland systems threatened by sea level rise into a prosperous community. So that's just something for addition to our agenda today. The order of business is as per the agenda, or is there changes, eh?
It's just the change.
Okay, so there's an agenda change in regards to 2.2, direction on proposed changes in response to comments received on the draft proposal change 5, Kaituna River to the regional policy statement. And that's about it for now, I think. We do have some of our officers here that will lead us through the changes in regards to the PSG. The RPS. So that's going to be the main bulk of our conversation today, is around those changes in the regional policy statement as we head towards filing the Kaituna document with the regional councils. So yeah, at this point, because we don't actually have Nikki on board here, but I'd like to progress. What I might do is transfer the chairship to the deputy chair, Mate Moana, and then I think we'll be able to progress on that fact. So that gives us that forum. So I take the chair's hat off and put my iwi hat on. It is a point that I think needs to be rectified for in the future, considering I aim on this as an iwi member, but because it's just the way that the politics of this works. So it'd be something that we may be able to raise. So I'm going to just going to hand over to one of the deputy chair to lead us into this until such a point where you have Nikki. Oh, Nikki's on board. Okay, everything I just said in the last minute, disregard. Kia ora, Nikki. Kia ora, Nikki. E mihi mai ana ki a koe, ki wainganui kia mātou. Tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Oh, well, ka huri no, we will move forward. So we're now on to we've already done the formal welcoming, but I suppose apologies. So we have apologies from Vincent Brown, Vicky Thomas and Jeff Rice. So just if someone could move.
I'll move.
Oh, sorry, are there any other apologies?
Yeah, kia ora, Mr. Chair. Just to let you know that just over the last hour, I've been called to a meeting at 11 o'clock, so I'll be leaving at about 5 to, just something like that. But of course, Joe Edwards and Kiharoa will still be here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Tēnā koe.
Okay, so
Cool.
Any other apologies?
Yeah, likewise, Mr. Chair, to taru here, I'll be leaving at around 12 o'clock.
Dean, in his absence, I'll put an apology in for John Scrimger as well.
I guess it might be worth just noting the unusual circumstances around Tauranga City Council at the moment, so we could potentially record some sort of apology there. The commissioners aren't yet sure on what basis they'll be engaging with co-governance entities like this. So we just have to wait and see, but they're not represented today because Councillor Hughes resigned from her council position.
Okay, so we have mover and Councillor McDonald. Can I have a seconder? Wawiri, kia ora. Any conflicts of interest? Absolutely not, thank you. Reports, direction on proposed changes in the for the regional policy statement. So this is the bulk of our meeting today. So if we can have, I suppose, a concentrated effort there. Everything else on our agenda is really to receive. But I want to hand it over to Nessa Steed. If you don't know Nessa, I'm sure he'll introduce himself. And also, we also have Moana. So at some point through Nessa, I suppose we'll introduce Moana as well.
Morena, tēnā rā koutou katoa, Mr. Steve Tokunua, Head Principal Advisor, I hope, Toi Moana, and to my left I have Moana Boyd, she's a Senior Planner here, also Toi Moana. Currently I'm managing proposed change 5, the Kaituna River to the Regional Policy Statement. This project, however, I'll be handing it over to Moana in the foreseeable future to run through the Schedule 1 process. But to date, we've been essentially drafting this change that we're required to, under the Tapuia Treaties Claim Settlement Act, the Regional Council is required to change its regional policy statement to recognise and provide for the visions, objectives and desired outcomes of Kaituna Hitonga Tukuiho, the Kaituna River document. And so the last time Te Maru Kaituna workshopped the draft change was back in 26th of June last year. At that time, they received independent advice from David Marshall, who largely supported the recommendations of staff in terms of the draft policy framework. It was then we took the feedback from Te Maru Kaituna to Council Strategy and Policy Committee, who had the delegation of the Regional Council in regards to changes to the regional policy statement and its regional plans. And at the 11th of August, a meeting of the Strategy and Policy Committee, they approved the change going up for broader iwi, community and stakeholder consultation. So between August and October last year, this document, this draft change, was released for informal consultation. And during that period, we received comments from 12 stakeholders, and I'll go through those shortly. Then following that period, staff considered the comments received. We articulated some staff recommendations in response to the comments, and those were intended to be reported up and considered by this forum on the 20th of November of last year. However, that meeting was cancelled. And so this is the first opportunity since then to report back to Maru members. However, we did go and report up the staff recommendations to Council Strategy and Policy Committee. And Thursday the 10th of December. And by and large, a lot of the recommendations the staff were proposing were endorsed, generally speaking, by Council's Regional Council Strategy and Policy Committee. However, in the track changes version that you have in front of you, the text that's highlighted green are the changes that that committee sought that differed from the recommendations that were put forward by Regional Council. So, in the first attachment to my report today, you have a track changes version. The text that's highlighted in red, the underline or struck through, are the changes that staff are recommending in response to the comments received. And the text that's highlighted green are the changes that were requested by Council's Strategy and Policy Committee. So the real purpose and the real aim of today is to seek the direction of the members of Te Maru Kaituna as to whether you endorse the changes that have been proposed by staff in response to the comments received, whether you seek additional changes and in regards to the changes that are recommended. So if you don't like changes, what are the alternative wording that you're seeking? So we record those. And in addition to that, we would like to hopefully elicit the reasoning or the rationale for those additional changes. And the reason for that is because we are required to prepare a Section 32 report for any change to regional policy statement or regional district plan under the Resource Management Act. And so we have to have an analysis of the issues and the options and the efficiency, effectiveness of the provisions that are being proposed and the appropriateness in terms of the Act. And so we need to go away and revise that report, because we have developed and prepared a Section 32 analysis for the changes it's currently drafted, but we also have to amend that in regards to any changes before this change is publicly notified. So following this meeting today, and before I get into the staff changes, if this forum and the members are generally comfortable with the changes and where we land with this document, then the staff are proposing to workshop it again with our Strategy and Policy Committee on the 23rd of March. And if our Strategy and Policy Committee are comfortable with the document as it is, then we'll seek that Regional Council adopt it and approve it at the April meeting, and from there we will commence the Schedule 1 process. You may be aware of the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management. That was approved and made operative at the beginning of September of last year. So we now know the contents and the direction, exactly what it entails. And what we do know, that we didn't at that point in time earlier, is that because this change relates to freshwater, it will need to go through the freshwater planning process. That will be the first change of any regional council document that will have to go through that process. I've included a link to the requirements of the freshwater planning process in the report and in the agenda. So if you have a copy, you should be able to go straight through to that information if you are interested. But in essence, it essentially follows the normal Schedule 1 process up until the appeals. Once we get to the appeals, there are restricted appeal rights for submitters. And also noting that the hearing commissioners must be appointed by a freshwater commissioner who is appointed by the Minister for the Environment, and iwi must nominate a hearing committee member who has expertise in multicultural traditions. So that's all I intend to say about that at this point in time. What I intend to do, I have a PowerPoint presentation that essentially picks out some of the key changes that staff are recommending. However, because we do have restricted time, I haven't gone through all changes. I've only highlighted those that I think will be of particular interest to the members. If that is the case, then there are points that the members want to discuss that aren't covered in the presentation, or would like to discuss those straight up and they would prefer a different order, then I'm open to whatever format the committee or the members would like to run this. But at this point in time, I'm just proposing running through the PowerPoint and the key changes that are being recommended. And then I'll leave it over to the chair to see, and the members to see how you feel after that. So if you're satisfied with that, then we'll proceed to the PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, Mr. Chair, sorry, tēnā koe me tō kōrero. Just a couple of things. When you were talking about there's a group will get together, a rōpū will get together on March the 23rd, and then what happened on my phone is that you paused, is that the actual picture paused for a while, so there was a section there that I missed. So what would happen after the March 23rd side?
Okay, I can just reiterate that if you like. So following this meeting, this workshop today, if the members are comfortable with the recommendations proposed, generally speaking, then staff will report up to the next Strategy and Policy Committee meeting, or it's a workshop on the 23rd of March. And then if the Strategy and Policy Committee, Regional Councils Committee, endorse the changes, then we will then seek approval of regional council to commence the Schedule 1 process. That's a submissions process. So keeping in mind, up until today and to date, this has just been a draft process, an informal process for consultation, and then once the Schedule 1 process kicks in, it's a formal process under the Resource Management Act.
Oh, tēnā koe, thank you very much for that. And I suppose my second question, if that's all right, Mr. Chair, one more question is that what would happen if, and I hope my hope is that the royal crew, that our Maru do come up with a decision that by the end of this week. But what happens if, let's say, kahanga rangirua, that decisions are up in the air? What is there a process that's in place should that happen? I just to be able to, I'm not saying that we don't, but just so that there's for those who are new or those who are still thinking he wahanga tonu ki rata, that there's still some time for them. Just that's my only question.
I think what would happen there if we don't come to, I suppose, endorsing what is discussed in today's hui, and we can't come to an agreement, it would be for Te Maru to probably maybe go back to independent advisor and then come through that way around what that is, and it would probably lead to another meeting with Nasser and his team around what it is that we can negotiate in regards to whatever the difference is that we're proposing.
And that process will also involve some input of iwi, perhaps. I don't know, but Nessa, just want to acknowledge you. I need to go, but just the depth and the robust mahi that you and your team have done. I've got this thing up here in front of you. It's just really awesome. Nō reira, kia koe, tēnā koe, o te rā kia koutou, ka nui te mihi, ka nui te aroha, tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair.
Kia ora, Kiki.
So what I intend to do now is to share my screen and bring up the presentation. I also have the actual version of the document that you have in the attachment 1 to your report. So if there are any comments or any changes that have been requested by the members today, then I can track those so you can see them on the screen, and that way it's transparent. And if I'm recording anything incorrectly, please let me know so we can alter that wording to accurately portray the committee members, the members' concerns, what have you. Okay, so bear with me, Taiho. So can everybody see the presentation?
Thumbs up.
Yep. Okay, cool. I take that as a yes. So can I bring this up larger?
Down the bottom there.
Oh yeah. Come on in. All right. So as I mentioned today, the primary purpose is to seek your input, your direction, your feedback on the recommendations being proposed in regards to the comments that we received. So that was back in, being mindful, that was October of last year when the period for comments closed. We did, and so if you are seeking any additions or changes, I'll track those. So they're up on screen as I mentioned. I'll also be asking for a little bit more information about the reasons, the rationales for any changes sought. So in terms of the comments that we received, there were only 12, and they are up on the screen right now. Being mindful, we didn't get any hapu or any iwi who commented on the document, and that's not to say that they were comfortable. I know everybody's got a lot of demands, and there's a lot going on, so we're not 100% sure where iwi, where hapu sit in regards to what's being proposed. We did get comments, and quite strong comments from Tahiki HC. Tahiki HC did comment on the draft, and noting that we did release and invite comment from all iwi and hapu within the catchment, and also those that straddle the catchment. But Tahiti HC's concerns are essentially the same as what they provided for the previous draft document, and I think members that have been part of this forum for some time will be fairly, they would have a good understanding what Tahiti HC's primary concerns are as a major landowner at the top of the catchment, and particularly around their aspirations for future development for the benefits of their beneficiaries.
And Nessa, before you go off that slide, it's Te Taru here. Yeah, that is, I know it's a big challenge, but that is an immediate concern about the lack of the, mana whenua and hapu commentary and participation. For whatever reason, it's still a concern. And I guess, as the chair, that puts a fair bit of onus upon Te Maru o Kaituna to add a pretty strong voice in this space. So I'm just putting that out there. It's an obvious one, and I'm sure others on the line are thinking that too.
Yeah. So we did have, in addition to those parties that commented who are on the screen, we did get comment from AFCO New Zealand Limited, Rangiuru Plant and Department of Conservation. They essentially said they were interested in the change, but they had no specific comment to make at this point in time, but they would be looking at the document when it's notified, and whether or not to make submissions. We also had requests for meetings with staff from Western Bay Planning District Council and from Regional Council's rivers and drainage staff. We discussed their concerns. I have all that documented if members are interested in knowing what the concerns were. And in regards to Western Bay Planning, they did make a comment, and so their comments are available. All the comments are up on our website, so if you wish to have a look at the comments in detail from any of those listed on the screen, you're welcome to go and have a look at those. And by and large, I've duplicated and summarised those comments in the order that they occur in the sequence of the provisions they comment on the document as we go through. I should mention that we have had a legal review undertaken, as we normally would, before we notify a change to any of our RMA documents and our plans. We also get a legal review to ensure that it meets the requirements under the Act, and also in this case, not just...
Can I just interrupt? I think Councillor Daly has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, thank
You have a question?
Yes, Dean, I was just wondering, NASA mentioned AFCO and DOC were interested in this, but they hadn't made any comments at this stage. With the limited chance, the new process, once submissions are received and the next stage, do they still have an opportunity to comment later on by simply logging an interest? Does that allow them further input later?
Okay, maybe I should explain. So this is an informal consultation process. The formal submissions process is yet to commence, and if we get, if the process goes as I've laid it out, then we should be notifying probably in May. And then we get the opportunity, anyone has the opportunity to make a submission and then a further submission. Although further submitters' rights are limited to either opposing or supporting the original provision submission. So in answer to your question, Department of Conservation and AFCO have the ability to make submissions on the plan when it is notified and changed.
Okay, yeah, I should have picked up on that, sorry.
Just also to recognise, and I know the members, particularly the iwi members, are keen to ensure that Te Mana o Te Wai is given effect to, and we've also reviewed and reflected on what was requested on previously, and also the requirements of the NPCP now, since it's been made operative on 3rd of September last year. There is a wider essential freshwater policy program underway in the Regional Council that has and I've dedicated a section of that to that in my report, which goes into it in a little bit more detail. But in essence, Regional Council has approved changes to the regional policy statement to the Regional Natural Resources Plan to be notified by July 2024 to meet the timeframes under that Act and under the NPS. So there is a broader package of changes to the RPS and to the Regional Natural Resources Plan that must be undertaken to give effect to the NPSFM, and that will also encompass this catchment and all other freshwater management units in the region. So that's just worthwhile noting that as well. So now I jump into the actual, some of the key changes being recommended by staff in response to the comments received. And if we go to the first part of the document itself, and change. This is where we agreed at the June workshop with Te Maru members last year to insert a statement around Te Maru's strong support for recognising Te Manawa Te Wai, and there are some slight amendments recommended here to align with the obligations around Te Manawa Te Wai under the NPSFM. So that's essentially just aligning more accurately with what's been stated in the NPSFM since it's been made operative. So I'm just going to continue on through these slides and through the changes. Please.
Can I ask members to verbally say that if you've got a question, because the screen here is quite small and I can't see if anyone's raising their hand, but if you do, can you verbally just say a question or something whilst we're going through? Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that members are reasonably comfortable with the changes, and as the chair has requested, if you're not, please sing out and let us know if you have questions or anything of that. Okay, so that's in regards to that. Now we get into the issues. So as we're aware, the Resource Management Act requires that any regional policy statement identifies the significant resource management issues for the region, in this case for the Kaituna River catchment. And these are intended to reflect the issues in the river document, but within the context of the catchment and the context of the issues and their appropriateness under the RMA. So in this regard, in regards to water demand, there were comments received by New Zealand kiwifruit growers, Hawke NZ, Forest and Bird and TCC in regards to this issue. And in response to those, we've recommended the changes above and on the screen. The changes have been recommended to better clarify the values that have been impacted. And while previously staff were recommending deleting mention of the management of the intervention, because during speaking in an issue, you don't go into what appropriate management is necessary. That was requested to be retained at the 10th of December Strategy and Policy Committee. So the words in green were previously recommended by staff to be removed, have been retained in response to the request of the Strategy and Policy Committee. So those are the changes being recommended. We've taken out specifying areas relating to urban population growth for Te Puke and Te Tumu, and recognising that through AFTI and through other amendments to the regional policy statement, further growth areas could be added within the lower Kaituna catchment as well. So because of that, we've decided against specifying certain areas, although there are examples.
Sorry, I've got a comment. If you don't, Dean, it's Jane. Just, I noticed that we've still got its tributary here, NASA, in that issue. I thought we decided to take that out all the way through on two.
So, sorry, what was that again, Jane?
We've still got
reference to
tributaries, and I thought we'd decided because we've got a definition which includes the tributaries in the definition, that we were going to take its tributaries out of all of the document. This seems to be overlooked in this one again.
Okay, let me go into the Word document. Sorry, you may not see this very well, as you can see. All right. Okay, so you can see this. This is the Word document up on your screen right now. I'm just going, yes, you're correct, Councillor Nees. So obviously at that point in time, unless those requests were made specifically, we may not have made them following that S&P, but you're absolutely right. We did suggest, that was suggested earlier, so I'll go in and make that comment now, make that change now.
Thank you.
Perhaps the Waiari was on your mind when you kept it in that particular paragraph.
I'll just highlight all the changes today in blue for now. I'll just make a quick comment.
Legislation.
And I think the map that of the Kaituna catchment indicates that it's tributaries as well. So the descriptor, when we say Kaituna catchment, includes tributaries. So there's no real requirement for it to be written, I suppose.
So I'm going to note that comment as it is on the screen, and I'm assuming, unless otherwise, it's being agreed by the members. So how do I go back to the other? Thank you.
Just a question, Nessa. If you removed tributaries and we had an instance where the issue is around allocation being caused within a contributory before it gets to the Kaituna, how does that impact on this? So it's a question, you know, do you remove it or do you not remove it?
I guess by having it in there, it's certain that it does apply. In the definition of Kaituna River, it just says, so it says the co-governance area identified in map 4B source office treaty settlements and includes all rivers and streams flowing into the Kaituna River and Maru Estuary. So it doesn't say tributaries, but it says streams.
Okay.
So when you refer to Kaituna River, you're referring to all rivers and streams flowing into the Kaituna River and Maru Estuary. So it's covered by that definition document. Okay, go on. So the second issue here is around urban growth, climate change and land use intensification. Western Bay requested that the issue be split into two. They believe that climate change and land use are distinctly different issues and they deserve to be dealt with differently. TCC wanted to qualify what effects are inappropriate and what unplanned activities are of concern in regards to this issue. And Forest and Birds supported the issue but sought widening to include effects on ecosystems and human health. So the recommendations are highlighted on the screen, again in the track changes version. So staff recommending removing and development at the end. In regards to land use intensification, specifying it's rural land use intensification, given that urban growth is already identified. And also including a reference to ecosystem health. Okay, so
No comments?
no comments, I'll move on. So the fourth issue currently refers to drainage scheme impacts. However, Western Bay wanted to clarification that it's the issue is about water bodies, not drainage schemes per se. And when you go back to the original river document, they're actually right, it does refer to water body modification. Drainage schemes are identified as an example in the river document, just an example only. So they've accepted that and amended the issue to refer to water body modification and remove reference to drainage scheme. Moving on. In regards to objective 40, iwi and hapu relationships with Kaituna River, the point that Forest and Bird made on this one is that the relationship with the river has been strained, and rather than being provided for, it needs to be restored and enhanced. In the river document, it does refer to protected, and we've had this debate earlier in June last year around the word protected versus provided for and the bar. And provided for, recognised and provided for was deemed to align with section 6E of the Act. However, when you're looking at the fact that yes, the relationship is strained, it would seem sensible that what we're trying to do as an objective is to restore and enhance iwi and hapu relationships with the river.
Before you go off that slide, Nessa, it gets back to I have no problems with the final commentary there, but when you're talking about iwi and hapu relationship with the Kaituna River, it is a pity that hapu and iwi aren't commenting on this one, haven't to date. So I've just made a comment. It's an observation. Forest and Birds have to do it for them.
I guess my comment would be that the relationship with the river exists. It's the ability to participate in decision-making, management, and direct engagement with the river. So the relationship isn't severed. It's the expression of that relationship that is the challenge. I can still say hikurangi te maunga, even though I'm sitting here on Rotorua. So the relationship is intact. It's the expression of that relationship that's challenging. So I'm not sure restoration of a relationship is what we're talking about. It's protecting that relationship and then the expression of that relationship being provided for.
Yeah, totally agree, Nikki.
So if we go by those comments and going back to what the members requested last year in June, am I hearing that we're still seeking protected as opposed to restored and enhanced?
Yeah, I can't support words that say we're going to restore our relationship because I don't think it's.
Because it already exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Would it be recognised and enhanced, or is it?
Recognised. Yep.
Recognised. Yep. We've got that.
Which is already there, the river recognised.
As opposed to an
and restored it.
Yeah, I guess I am, based on the conversation we previously had, I'm comfortable with where we landed. This comment doesn't reflect how I see my relationship with the Kaituna River as an iwi member.
Yeah.
So if that is the case, do we go back to provided for? Retain, provided for, remove, restored and enhanced?
You recognised and enhanced.
Yeah, I guess my comment is I was comfortable with where we had landed because we had the discussion previously.
Look, if the members are happy with going back to and provided for, then I'm happy to go back to that, obviously, because that's what the members are seeking in this regard. I mean, I felt that that was appropriate, but then I felt that restored and enhanced was better than provided for, but if you prefer provided for, and I do acknowledge that it's aligned with section 60 of the Act, and that's why we originally went to that wording. If the members prefer and provided for in preference to restored and enhanced, then I'll go back to that wording.
Yeah.
Just if I may, Mr. Chair, I think one of the lenses that the members should consider looking through when considering the wording here is how would a consent officer sitting in a territorial local authority or a regional council consider the different versions of the text that you recommend for inclusion here? Because that's essentially what they'll be looking at, isn't it, Nessa?
That's correct. I mean, I think it's clearer in a consenting situation that what's restored and enhanced as opposed to provided for.
Yeah, provided for seems to me to be a little bit more passive, requiring less change to the status quo than restored and enhanced, which indicates that there's some change from the status quo. I totally get what you're saying, Nikki, and I don't know what the right wording is, but I just thought maybe reflecting on, if you were a consents officer, it would potentially be easier to say that an application had provided for it because it hadn't not provided for it. But if it had to enhance it, if we take away that word restore, that's a more active requirement than provide for. I don't know.
If we look at the action plan and some of the projects, including around enhancing cultural access, erecting po, providing for taonga waka, those sorts of things, and then if there is actual physical works that are required as a result of those projects that are funded for and supported by Te Maru Kaituna partner agencies, including the district and city councils and regional council, requiring a resource consent, then when you make that application, you refer to these specific provisions and say, the erection of po whenua and the development of taonga waka, physical works, the establishment of physical structures that are supported by the members of Te Maru, then when you're looking at the words restore and enhance, it's probably better, it's easy to make the connection that those projects are going to restore and enhance those relationships. But you can still argue the relevance of provided for, but I think potentially, if you're looking at someone in a consenting situation, a consent officer and a consent authority, particularly if there's opposition from landowners or other members in the community, then it might give it stronger support, stronger weight in their context.
Just a thought, Nessa, could we have it recognise, enhance and provided for? It's
yes, I mean, I think it seems to me the contention here is around restore and that relationship's never been lost. And so if that's the case, then we could say recognise, provided for and enhanced.
Yeah, and just in the actual supporting text underneath the objective, there's a comment, even seek opportunity to restore these connections. So I welcome Nikki's thoughts on that phrase there too, given the comments about the wording of restore.
Yeah. This Te Taru here, Nikki, just before you get in, I totally agree that we've already got that relationship. We've used the word strengthened, Pim, and I think that should be there, in my view. A recognised, strengthened and enhanced, because if you recognise it, you want to strengthen that recognition. And so I like the word strengthened. It's a bit more hard-hitting and enhanced. I don't see the two as necessarily being the same. So anyway, that's my view, my point. So Nikki, what's your comments?
I'm not sure I'm looking in the right place on the document because I can't see. I might be in the wrong.
Page number.
It's page 27 of the agenda.
I was way down in 60. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, we're in the actual document. I was looking at the comment section. Give me 1 second. My apologies. I'm comfortable with strengthen. I think.
Page 27, attachment one.
Sorry. Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh.
page 29. Page 29. of the-
Okay. Thank you. 29. In the supporting text.
Yes. I'm looking at the full document. It's actually number 27 on my electronic version, but it may be different on somebody else.
Sorry, I'm still not there.
Oh,
We're all trying to find it.
Yeah.
Can I just make
It's the page after the map, Nikki.
Oh, that's really helpful. Yes, thank you.
Kia, it's page 38 of the hard copy agenda.
Thank you,
And
Joe.
29 of the electronic. Yep.
38.
And
Yeah, no, my comment is that that's in the table, but in the actual document, it's 2 pages before that.
Oh, yes.
Can you see
Just
where?
in the-
got it. The spiritual have become increasingly strong. To restore these connections, strengthen these connections. Yes, okay, thank you. Yes, I'm comfortable with that. So we're changing
Okay.
restore to strengthen. Is that what I'm?
drop,
We're all good with
restored,
that?
and enhanced.
Yes.
Strengthened and enhanced
Provided.
and provided for.
Yeah.
Strengthened, enhanced and provided for. Is that all the same?
Strengthened, recognised, strengthened and provided for.
I just heard the word strengthen being used, and I'm just wondering where that was going to go.
So what I'm hearing is we don't like the word restore. We prefer the word strengthen. We'll replace restored with strengthened. And there's also contention as to, at this point in time, whether we go back to using and provided for. I guess my view is strengthened and enhanced have similar meanings. And so you would use one or the other. And what I'm hearing is that people prefer the word strengthen to enhance. If I bring up the synonyms to strengthen, and you'll see it on the screen, which is, these are the, what are similar meanings to what strengthen means. It's wired, well, I have a different idea what wired means, but anyway. Supported, reinforced, bound, underwired, held together, fortified, braced. So, okay, that's what strengthened means in this context. Those are what they're providing. Whereas enhanced means improved, greater, heightened, boosted, higher, superior, enriched, better. I have to say that in the RMA context, enhanced is used probably more readily. However, that's Kate Pai. I'm just suggesting that you would probably go for one or the other. But if you want to go for both, then that's your call. And what I'm also asking for direction is whether you're still going to go with provided for. So I'm suggesting you go either recognised, strengthened and provided for, or you go recognised, enhanced and provided for.
I'm good with enhanced and provided for.
Any others? Is everyone in agreement there?
Oh, Nessa, you dropped provided for when you added restored, did you?
Yes, up until today, I was recommending replacing provided for with restored and enhanced. What we're now debating is whether we retained, provided for, and what I'm hearing is we're not going for restored anymore. Restored's gone, it's out the door. The question is whether we have strengthened and enhanced. But what it is, it's either recognised, strengthened and provided for, or what I'm suggesting is it's either recognised, strengthened and provided for, or it's recognised, enhanced and provided for. So which of those two options is what I'm suggesting is preferred by the members?
Just quickly, I'd go with the latter, enhanced and provided for, and await the others.
Are any of the members in a different thought, to strengthen or enhanced? Enhanced, I think. Tony?
Yeah, no, look, I'm okay with it. I mean, quite frankly, I'd throw the two of them in. But I'll go with enhanced. You know, I do see a subtle difference in strengthen and enhance, even that definition that was provided.
Yeah.
One was talking about wiring it up. If you're looking at it, you're going to make this damn thing real strong. And enhance means you're going to continue on with it. So to cut the debate, I want to
If we don't have to choose, that'd make me happy.
Okay, all right. So to move forward, why don't I suggest we go recognised, strengthened, enhanced, and provided for. That's a mouthful, but yeah, you know, I think it keeps everybody happy. Is that correct?
That's correct by me.
I think it makes for compelling YouTube viewing as well.
And the meaning of words.
All right. I'm going to just put this up here so you can all see it. Amy. So I'm just going to make a note here that this has been agreed.
Nessa, while you're doing that, I'm just going to pop out for 2 minutes. I will be back.
Okay.
Just to double check, Nessa, you're going to then change it in Objective 40 and in Policy KR1B, both?
So this is Objective 40 and KR, yes. Yes, well, we got to get to 1B, but yeah, I mean, KR1B flows from Objective 40, so therefore, as a consequential amendment, and we may as well deal with that now, is yes. So I'll get to that, but that is the case. We're going, I may as well do it here in the heading.
Yeah.
It's
also
it's
supporting commentary under Objective 40, so that we just maybe do a search on restore and just make sure that we have dealt to all of them that are appropriate in this instance.
all right, I think we got there. So just in regards to that, recognise, strengthen, enhance, and provide for. Recognise, strengthen, enhance, and provide for. Okay. So, I guess I need to go back to this. All right. Okay, I shall move on. So, Objective 41, water quality. So, your water quality, you can see that there were some comments by federated farmers, TCC and Forest and Bird. They were essentially wanting some clarity around what their concern was around the meet agreed standards, and they wanted some sort of either certainty as to what that was, or a time frame as to when that would be met. And they wanted to be, in federated farmers' view, they wanted to be agreed standards so it's workable and realistic. Obviously, then the NPSFM came into effect. So we have recommended those changes on the screen. In this case, Councillor Nees, we've recommended removing intermediaries, taking out healthy, included the words ecosystem health, human contact, threatened species, and Mahinga Kai values to align with the NPSFM wording, particularly those that are in Appendix 1A. They're the compulsory values specified in Appendix 1A of NPSFM, specifically those around ecosystem health, human contact, threatened species, and Mahinga Kai. So we preferred those to the ones that were being proposed by Forest and Bird, which didn't align with those compulsory values. No fault of their own, they probably weren't aware of them at the time because it wasn't released. And staff, we don't, in regards to the timeframe requested by Forest and Bird and others, we think that's best defined through the Natural Resources Planning process, which I've outlined needs to be notified by July 2024. In regards to that process, it'll go through quite a robust consultation process with stakeholders in iwi, tanga whenua. So those are the requests, the changes recommended by staff. Okay, I know you're back, Nikki. I'm going to move on if I don't hear anything.
Just for clarification, so we're talking water quality, and we're obviously talking surface water because we've got the words including groundwater to introduce. Or was that a descriptor of all water?
In the legislation refers to groundwater that's connected to the Kaituna River. And we've had this debate with staff, and it came up in the last strategy and policy committee meeting as well. And at the time, I guess I wasn't 100% certain because there'd been a lot of discussions, even though we had discussed it with staff, science staff, what their views were that, in theory, groundwater in the catchment is connected to the river, but it really depends on the times of the year and where in the catchment you're talking about. So, depends on the flows of the water and also in the lower parts of the catchment. Some parts of the catchment aren't, you could say at times of the year they're not specifically connected, the groundwater is not connected to the river, but in theory, most of the time, in one way or another, it is connected to the river. Okay, so I'm moving on to Objective 44, relating to, and this is the issue around good versus best management practice. So staff are recommending removing best and replacing with good management practice. In the river document, it refers to improved land management practices. The reason we've recommended this is because under the Plan Change 10, which relates to nutrient management, but also to a lake catchment only, I have to say, it was agreed through the appeals process, and that's now essentially finalised, so we can openly refer to this process. It was agreed with the Māori trustees, Central North Island iwi, and Federated Farmers that good management practice was appropriate in their context. So that's essentially in a nutshell why. And if I add to it, I mean on page 69 in the Word document, I go into a bit more detail around good versus best, and particularly in the context of those proceedings, because you know, I was mindful that some iwi members might be concerned about the differences about best and good. I mean, some of the issues with best is it's aspirational, whereas good has got a lot of ground truthing. It's widely accepted in practice and on the ground, and it's widely accepted in other Resource Management Act planning documents, particularly regional plans throughout New Zealand, whereas best is really referred to. Even though it is referred to in the regional policy statement, it's only referred to in regards to policy specific to Lake Rotorua catchment and catchments at risk. But at this point in time, Kaituna River catchment isn't a catchment at risk. So the objective and policy KR5B that's linked to the objective both now refer to good management practice. Okay, so if there's no concerns around that.
So NASA, can I just raise a question as a staff member or through you, Mr. Chair? So in the Ministry for the Environment's guidance for land use, they talk about good farming practice, even though it refers to horticultural practices as well as agricultural practices. And I'm not sure whether you've considered that terminology. I'm happy with the change. I think it is.
I think good management practice refers to everything broadly.
Yeah.
If you specify good horticultural, good farming, then you know you just, whereas this would cover it all.
I'm happy with that.
Are members at ease with the word good?
I'm so used to thinking in terms of being the best. I'm a little bit but and I want to be aspirational, but I understand that if we want to take people with us, that we have to be practical and we have to offer them the best pathway to get where we need to go. So I'll relent on being the best.
I actually thought that Tauranga Lakes Trust were a party to those proceedings. I might be wrong.
That was a negotiated proceeding, yeah. I mean, best, yeah. And I'm here for Rangi Muhi, remember. We were party to those proceedings as well. So I just think
that was part of the reason what swayed me.
yeah.
Quite right though, Nikki. We've for the last 15 years we've been using the word best practice. Best practice. So it just seems a bit good, but I'm at ease with that.
Yeah, I just want it noted that those are negotiated discussions and
As Te Taru here, I must admit I am used to the word seeing best because I think it is aspirational, but that's where we should be in bringing in the sorts of transformational changes that we're requiring. It equates more with the whole mood of change to well-being. So, but hey, look, I'm not going to argue about this one. I'll go with good, but I still have this fondness for best, to be frank.
I have to say I preferred best because it was aspiration, and for that, from that point of view, and we're given that we've accepted it in our own proceedings and in our regional plan that implements the RPS, that refers to best management practice in their catchment specifically, that already sets a precedent for us. So it's kind of, been a lot of discussions and been a lot of looking at the council's evidence and the actual the decisions that and all the documents that weighed into that debate to get to this point. Probably disappointing, to be honest, but it's the reality. We've accepted that approach.
Yeah,
and the council said it too.
I agree. I agree. With that comment. I mean, I just get this feeling that that the word "good" is a little bit of watering down of the expectations, just to make it more practical. But it's often the case where when we relent like that, we let the reins a bit too loose. And I do think we're at a time now, if we want real change, then we've got to go for those words that are strongest. And so that's why I like best. And the fact that it's been mentioned in the documents you mentioned sets precedence, and I don't think we should escape from those precedences in this instance.
In bullet point 3, Kaituna River document refers to improved land management practices, so maybe improved or improved good management practices, or good improved management practices.
In that case, I would just leave it with best management practice.
Yeah, I think the signal we want to send is what you're doing is not good enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's just so if good management practice is an evolving practice, which is towards improvement, and we've talked about enhanced through good management practice. I mean, I just want to see what the accompanying comments are in terms of.
I've summarised some of the key points in the actual document itself at page 69 that you can refer to. Under the paragraph starting in policy WL 60. You know, at this point in time, it's the forum's call. If you prefer to use the word best or improved, then I can make that note. And even though this is only staff recommendations, we have to go back to strategy and policy, and they'll make the final call. So if you unanimously agree that you prefer to see the word good replace with best and retain best, or you prefer to use the word improved land management, then you know, it's over to you. And I can record that, because there's sounds to me as there's no, at this point in time, there's disappointment with what's been proposed.
I'm happy to go back to best and let the community tell us otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. I'll go.
But I think we set the bar. I mean, yeah.
I mean, it will be the Strategy and Policy Committee committee that will make that call on the 23rd of March. So I'll make that recording now, and we will.
Are members of Maru comfortable if we would go back to the word best and set that precedence, and then let the community, or well, consent officers, I suppose, whatever, policy officers, make that change? Is everyone comfortable with that? Go back to best.
I am.
Yeah, this is Nick here. Yeah, I agree. We're trying to achieve good practices to start improving, but the ultimate game is to achieve the best practice. That's the ultimate outline. So I think if we, as you say, if you water it down, that's the sort of the ending point almost. Whereas if you have best practice, that's the end goal. That's what we want to achieve. So I'm all for best practice.
Grant.
I was just thinking that sometimes best practice in a contemporary sense might be what everyone's using, because you know that's what they've always done, or not, but it's sort of the level of the technology where they've got up to, that's the best contemporary practice, but it may still not be ideal, if you know what I mean. So just a slightly different slant on it.
Is that not a, so it's not unanimous then that the members agree to use best as opposed to good?
I support it. I support it. Yeah, it's Jane, I support.
I do too.
I think I'll just.
Councillor McDonald agrees. Lawity agrees. Grant, can you just specify exactly if you're opposed to using the word best?
No. I'm just sort of making the point that sometimes best practice of the day is still short of optimum, based on technology that may be available but very expensive, or difficult to implement maybe, but that is currently the best available, but it may not be perfect. But I'm happy to dealing with the group.
Okay, I'm going to leave it as unanimous if that's the case.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, shall we move on?
Yeah.
So we've gone back to best, Kapai. Objective 45. This is essentially just semantics, really. It's just changing it around to make it make better sense. So I don't think there'll be any concerns around this from the members, but sing out if you're not happy with the changes. Otherwise, I intend to move on. It's just that, there was a few changes in it, but it's better. Okay,
Okay.
so this is a relationship. So obviously, we've already had that debate. We've gone for recognise, strengthen, enhance and provided for. I'll make those changes, consequential changes to the document. Thank you very much. Managing groundwater. So groundwater, yeah, it's there's a few changes, and particularly mostly in the actual explanation for the policy, because we felt that they weren't technically correct. And then, the green, that's in relation to the feedback from our strategy and policy committee members on the 10th of December last year. So really in the policy itself, it's essentially just changing where social is referred to in paragraph B. It doesn't have a consequence in real effect, but the changes to the actual explanation text are really to accurately portray the situation in the catchment as it applies to groundwater, and to reflect in regards to urban development that ought to do as a tier 2 urban environment under the NPS urban development. But really, if you think about it, the catchment, by and large, most of the urban catchment of Rotorua doesn't really come within the confines of the Kaituna catchment or where the growth is going to happen. Although, the aspirations to see that might differ. So I don't intend to go into that any further, except that there's debate over whether water is a renewable resource, and really it just comes down to whether it's responsibly managed. It will depend on whether it's a renewable resource. And that's why that area, that was contention at that council meeting. If there's no questions, concerns, then I'll move on. So policy KR60 relating to Indigenous aquatic, riparian, wetland vegetation habitats. Really, we just altered the wording to protect, restore and enhance. We're using that word restore here, but it's in regards to Indigenous ecosystems. And so we felt that this was better wording, made more sense. And we're also removing remaining wetlands, so we're covering all wetlands, not just remaining. Could deal with increasing. Obviously, it makes more sense in that regard. So those, not other than that, I'll move on to policy 8 as enabling recreational activities along the Kaituna River. So Western Bay of Plenty, one of the explanation strengthened to refer to the action plan projects involving land acquisition. Or I think I did. That's what it stated anyway. Let me just check that. But the recommendations to this policy are essentially concerned with trying to make it make more sense. And the Strategy and Policy Committee wanted reference to the Kaituna River project around providing for Kaituna River access. And so you can see that's in green. So that was raised at the Strategy and Policy Committee on the 10th of December But other than that, the wording's intended to make policy clearer and easier to understand the intent.
And maybe this is
Tony,
oh, sorry, it's Te Taru here, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the Kaituna and the recreational activities, I'm just aware that, as you will be, that there's quite a lot of wāhi tapu along that particular river, and burial sites and all sorts of things. So, I mean, it might be captured somewhere else, but is there some commentary on those cultural connections at all? I'm just offering a thought.
I had the same thought.
There are other policies that balance this out. Recreational activities, public access is a matter of national importance under Section 68, but so is recognised providing for the cultural traditions of Maru and their relationship with their taonga and their sites, including sites of cultural significance. There's Section 7A, which deals with kaitiakitanga. Those matters are all picked up. They're referred to in the policy framework. Under this, in relation to this objective and this policy, they support it as well. So if we go to
Page 52 of the paper agenda.
Yeah, so if we go to the objective, other policies that support it are recognising the treaty and the exercise of the functions and powers of the Act and enabling development of multi-game Māori land, cultivating relationships between iwi and statutory management agencies, recognise dealing with these sorts of issues, identifying, erecting po and other cultural markers, so recognising statutory acknowledgements, taking into account UN Hubbard management plans and assessing environmental effects of activities, promoting consultation with potentially affected tangata whenua, evaluating matters of significance to tangata whenua, considering appointing pukenga to hearing committees. So,
yeah, I acknowledge that now. So I suppose, Mr. Chair, just for you again, maybe, I don't know what, but maybe just a reference that's more proximate to this particular policy and recreational activities would be appropriate, because it gives instant recognition, recreation activities and cultural protection in that space, without having to go through a plethora of other statements to bring that to a head. I just don't know. It's just a question of instant recognition when you're looking at this particular part.
And I mean, my concern is there's no provision of protection to people for their cultural safety, so that they may have access to a particular part of the river. And how do we protect them from things unseen, I suppose, around wāhi tapu? So, I mean, you could say that cultural safety is covered under public safety, but really it's about, is the kaitiaki of people who are in that environment, we need them to be culturally safe. And recreation opportunities that don't keep them culturally safe need to be considered.
yeah, I guess I have to go back to what we're required to do under the Act, under the Tapu Claim Settlement Act, which is to recognise and provide for the objectives, desired outcomes of the river document. So this objective and the accompanying policy, trying to do justice to that, and that accompanying policy is recreational activities along the Kaituna River. And you're right, do not compromise safety or priorities of Te Maru Kaituna for the restoration, protection and enhancement of the Kaituna River. So what I'm hearing is the concern is around there are a number of wāhi tapu, sites of cultural significance of the river, the spiritual element to that, and so that's not picked up in the policy as it currently stands. So that's maybe something that I would have to go away and come up with some additional wording in the explanations of the policy to recognise and provide for that. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, kapai from me.
Yeah.
Could I maybe work with you, Councillor White to try and address your concerns around that and come with some wording to add to the explanation?
Yeah, no problems.
I think it's probably a concern of the Maru open, but I mean, if we could on that, I think you can draw on policy KR 9B. You can draw out of that policy that might help to enhance the one that we're currently talking about, so that there's an alignment. So it's not just a place of recreation, but there are things that connect to it in regards to if there are waiting within a particular area. So you may be able to draw across there.
Actually, that's good wording. Can you just?
Aren't these recorded?
So I'm going to record that.
Yeah.
Rewind on the video. No.
So please, again.
Can't remember now.
Not just a place of recreation.
So it's not just a place of recreation, but it's recognising anyone that may be in that area. And you can draw from the policy 9B in regards to connecting those two. So in the through the working program, the Kaituna, when we identify areas that are accessible to the general public, there's a process that's required. So these are kind of footnotes in regards to having that local tangawhenua, the mana whenua of that part of the river, identify if there are any matters waihi tapu within that access point, so that they can be dealt with.
Is there anything else other members would like to add to that, to the comments for further consideration?
No, I've just had a look at that and I think that's a really good suggestion.
Kia ora. This is Nick here again with my Te Wairiki Pūria Trust hat on and working with young people. I think that's something that's really incredibly profound for young people, is when they go and experience things in the outdoors, that they actually have the connection to what it means and how that river ties back in. So, and I know talking to a lot of kayakers who kayak the river, they want to know more. They want to know where they're going and understanding it more. So it gives it the power of water to heal young people, and then understanding why they're there is really important. So it's that wider explanation to the communities, I think, really helps. So I think it's really important. And I know our young people talk about it being really important, about what makes a change for them. That's just my 2 cents worth for the work I do with young people.
Thanks, Nick. We okay, Nessa?
Yeah, that's good. Yep, I'll work on that. So I'll just say that we can go back. We're not too far away. So that's okay.
Kia ora. Matt here from Western Bay. Just go back to 8B. Western Bay's submission point wasn't around land purchase as such. Our submission point was more about making use of the land the regional council already owns through their stock bank schemes, and emphasising that.
Yeah, I think we've so we have talked about that, and regional council is supportive of working with the TAs to enhance public access to rivers and utilising their assets and their land, including hard infrastructure where it's cycle lanes, walking lanes, and the like. The only issue is that they do have agreements in place that where regional council is required to undertake maintenance or upgrading, that the cost of reinstating those walkways or those cycle lanes is borne by the city or the district council. So I think that's where we got to with that, and the comments I provided back to Western Bay Planning.
Cheers.
Yep, thank you. So method 3, safe locations for recreation, which is linked to the policy we just talked about. It's just additional wording added there. To clarify what is meant by the policy, but then, so it's about identifying specific locations in the Kaituna River that are used for, or that people would like to use for contact recreation, policy KR2B. Actually, no, it's KR2B, not 8B. Anyway. And then the implementation was widened to specify the councils as well. So I'm not hearing any commentary, so I'm presuming that's okay.
I live under the mistaken, obviously, assumption that the whole river and its tributaries should be safe for contact recreation, and that's where we are heading. Is that not the case?
Well, the river, when you refer to river, it refers to all streams.
Yes.
Within the catchment. Not the Kaituna River, so that's the case. So employment opportunities. So this method, I guess, raised concerns from some submitters as to whether or not it's appropriate to have a method provisions in the RPS that look to promote employment opportunities for tangata whenua. And so we did get legal advice on this, and we were comfortable that was the case, that we were okay including the provision, and that was adequately linked to the provisions in the river document, and so we've left it in there. However, we have recommended a change to delete the word land management, so that it's broader than just land management projects, recognising that focuses around the river and its tributaries, streams flowing into it. So, yeah, Western Bay Penny and Federated Farmers opposed the method on that basis. I didn't feel it was appropriate for original policy statement, and the Timu Land Owners Group wanted it to apply only to multiply owned Māori land. And Eastland, they were the ones that felt that referring to land management was too narrow a focus. In the Eastland Generation Limited, they're in a joint project with Tahiki Aysbury around the geothermal development of their land. But yeah, I tend to agree with their concern in that regard, so I've recommended that change. That's the only change to that method. I'm going to move on if I don't hear anything. So that's all I've covered.
Yeah,
and again, I
just can you explain this the statement again? Provide employment opportunities for those who work through projects in the Kaituna River, including providing.
Promote employment opportunities for tangata whenua through projects in the Kaituna River, including providing. Well, that leads into the other paragraphs in the actual. So there's providing, including providing pest and silviculture management services, fencing services. So I've only just, because it's a PowerPoint, you only got so much room on the screen. So I've just highlighted the changes that, and the rest of the method is as it is in the actual document itself.
Okay.
So again, it's about trying to do justice to the objectives and the desired outcomes in the river document, and ensuring that the forum members are comfortable with the changes that have been recommended by staff in response to the comments that we've received. And so that essentially concludes or wraps up what I've decided to include in this presentation. Recognising it doesn't include all changes, but to my mind, these are the main changes. And members are welcome to raise concerns or any issues about any other changes that have been identified. But if I just go back to, again, the next steps in moving forward, if I've got some homework to do, I've got some consequential amendments that I need to make. I am going to work with Councillor White in regards to the wording for the explanation text to address the concerns around those wahi tapu within the river and safety concerns about that. In regards to, in contrast to promoting recreational access to the river, trying to ensure there's protection and acknowledgement of those sites of cultural significance in the wahi, or the cultural elements attached to it, the spiritual dimension, I guess you could say. And then the intent is to report to the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting on the 23rd of March, which is a month and a bit away. And then if our committee, let's hope they do, agree to support the change, then we'll go forward. Is the screen? I think the screen, oh no, it's still something on there. Just thought it was frozen. And if the Strategy and Policy Committee accept staff recommendations, then we'll be looking to seek approval from Council to notify Change 5 at their meeting in April, the 21st of April, I think that meeting is, and I've set it out in my report. And from there, I would expect to be notifying this by May. So again, thank you members for your consideration today. And I will hand it back to our Chief.
Okay, so do you need me to go through these actions required?
Well, there's recommendations.
So the recommendations that we received the report endorse the amendments. I was given direction to the wording that we've proposed to keep or to change. Note council approval. Well, oh yeah.
Please be Mr. Chair.
Yes.
What about the green bits? Did we already do that?
The green bit is covered.
So the green bits highlighted in the document are the changes that were requested by the Strategy and Policy Committee on the 10th of December. And so I put those in there to differentiate the changes that our Strategy and Policy Committee asked for. And
right.
That's just so that you're aware.
Cool. Thank you.
For transparency.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so back to the recommendations, provide direction on alternative wording to provisions for the TMOC members, disagree with approved or proposed amendments, which we've done. Notes, Tuimuana staff will seek regional council approval to commence the formal RMA Schedule 1 submissions process by mid-2021. And number 5, notes that draft proposed change by Kaituna River to the regional policy statement will be subject to new freshwater planning process set out in section 80A of the Resource Management Act, RMA. I think it's whenua nominee with tikanga Māori and Mataranga Māori experience must be appointed to the freshwater hearings panel. We didn't quite cover that one, but I'm just going to ask if there are members who, if there's anyone that comes to mind that might be possibly recommended as a commissioner from Te Maru. Otherwise, I think if we don't choose someone, then it'll, as we go on, there'll be a choice made from, I'd say, those involved with the hearings. But if there are anyone comes to mind, who can we let know if we can't make, if we don't have anyone today?
You can let myself know. So Te Maru or Kaituna members will be asked if they want to nominate someone, put someone forward for regional council to endorse, and then put forward to the freshwater commissioner, who will then be tasked with appointing the hearing panel.
Okay, so if anyone comes to mind, then we can communicate that through NASA. Okay, so I'm going to ask someone to move what we've just done. Nikki, and second. Nick. Okay. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, that was the big part of today. for our agenda. Just a question, Nikki, are you still with us, or because I think you maybe have some other things to attend to? How long are you going to be with our meeting?
I think I'd said I could stay till 12, so
12, okay.
I probably need to duck off.
Okay.
And likewise, Mr. Chair, Te Taru here, I have to duck off as well.
Okay, before you go, can I just give my report, my verbal report? But basically, it's last year, before COVID, a team of us were meant to get together and create a website with council's staff, which we did with Kaituna. However, through that process, Councillor Tahana left, and then we had the unfortunate death with Mariana Horn, which left me the only member on there to do a or to put it together with Katarina. So, is it on? Are we sharing?
Right. It's okay. Just this camera's not operating.
Okay, so just going to share that. So this is, yeah. Oh, okay. So basically, this is our website. So, So there was some comment around, well, you know, do you always got to go to regional council to find out what we're doing as a board? And so that's what initiated this discussion around having our own website. It is linked to regional council's website as well. So there's a bit of updating that's required in regards to pictures and that, but it basically describes who we are, who we represent, those sorts of things. So if the public, our area of interest, if the public are keen to engage with us, they can engage via this way. Tangata Whenua can engage this way as well. So, you know, if you're going to post out to whānau and iwi, this is a good page to do it on. In regards to our plans, that's our document. It's online. And this is our action plan online again. So our whānau and members of the public can access this as a way to understanding what it is that we're doing. These are the various projects that we've outlined within the Te Tinio Tuna. We have our meetings here, and minutes are in that as well. The newsletter is there. Anyone can join the newsletter and start getting these postings. The Pānui, and this one here is images and videos associated to our journey to date, basically. So I suppose I'm just saying to members, if you want to socialise that with your hapu and whānau, etc., iwi, then this is available. It's a more easier way to connect with rather than going through the regional council's website. But yeah, so that was the first thing I just wanted to share around that. I'll turn that off and hand that back. The second thing I was just wanting to also share is, and it kind of comes in line with what we've been talking about around land, wetlands, significant sites of interest, waihitapu and that. Now, it's come to my attention that there's a block of land down on the Kaituna known as Te Karaka. It's a piece of land that's significant to local iwi, so Tapuika, Waitaha, Ngāti Whakaue, I think Rangiwewehi, Tauranga Moana tribes, Ngā Pōtiki and Ngāti Pūkenga. They have a history connected to this place, Te Karaka. Te Karaka is privately owned and it's up for sale. The land comes and sidles right up onto the Kaituna, so it has a part wetland area. It's hugely significant from a cultural and tribal perspective. So it's there. I suppose what I'm just asking the members of Te Maru, whether Te Maru would be interested in maybe some type of joint purchase of it, of this block. I feel that it could help towards some of the objectives and that we're trying to achieve here. And so the block sits on the seaward side of the Kaituna, and with all the development down there through Te Tumu and that's proposed for the future, it would be great to have a block in there on that side of the river that sidles up onto the other side where we have these projects with Paulipo, the wetlands on that side. So we're looking at both sides of the river. So I suppose the proposal to the councils and to iwi, and possibly through Te Maru, that we look at maybe a joint approach, and maybe Te Maru may be the entity that might lead that approach. So that's probably the other thing I just wanted to let members know. If we're looking at cost, I think it's around about 850k has been asked for the block. But I think in the wider and the longer term, it's a purchase that probably would have benefits towards a lot of the actions that we're trying to propose here on the Kaituna. So I'll just leave that with you. And my last update is some will remember Sam Sutton. Sam Sutton up the top of the river had a proposal to have a walkway, sky walkways over the Kaituna River. So we supported that as Te Maru. And he's just informed me that he's also got his consent via Department of Conservation. And so that'll be a project that he's quite keen to keep us involved as Te Maru around what's happening up there. And I think he promised us free tickets to when they open it. I said, oh, well, okay, whatever. But no, that's fine. That's a good story, I think, especially if you remember Sam is quite a energetic young lad, and it's got a lot of potential, I think. So, yeah, those are the three things I want to just report on. In regards to that one around Te Karaka, I suppose I could be that contact via Pim or myself, I suppose. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to put a little bit of context on that, I don't think Chairman Flavel is proposing that Te Maru at this stage committed 185,000, whatever it is, budget towards the purchase. It's more a case of whether or not the members of Te Maru collectively support approaches being made to potential funders for a joint purchase of some sort, in which case, then the agencies could start to do a little bit of work around that. Does that help? Yeah.
There's a potential to bring that area up on the screen. So
do you have it?
I can do that. Yep.
Oh, well, can you do it? Just got to share
so
the
we can all see the area.
While you're doing that, I just want to make a comment that I would totally support that. I think it's a really proactive way that the Te Maru members can demonstrate its commitment to the Kaituna document and the vision. It's a really practical, pragmatic and positive contribution to that plan. So, total.
Yes. Yep. You can see there the motorway in the background, motorway bridge, and the Bell Road boat ramp is between the white marked area of land and the bridge.
Yeah. So it has potential for a wetland area on this side. I think the way tapu on the far side is boats are up there, the top there with that, with the where Jessica just indicated.
So what activities are on there at the moment, Dean, Mr. Chair?
Sorry?
What activities are currently undertaken on that particular land block? What are they been using
What's
it for?
happening there now? What's happening on the land now?
I have no idea what they're doing there. Is it in the description?
If you'd like, I can answer that question. There's some pastoral grazing going on, and it has been used as a fill site. Some of that filling, I've asked our compliance team to look into because some of it's quite recent, and I'm not sure, but it may have encroached into the wetland area that's on that piece of land. So our compliance team are having a look at that at the moment. It's not developed at this point.
Okay.
It's still there on that. If you look on that previous one, Jess, you see where that material is. In behind there's been some earth dumped on the site in recent times.
Yeah, I suppose contributing to a bit of sedimentation, Pim.
One of the ecological advantages of it, from just looking at it from that perspective, is back in 2014, a couple of ecologists from the Regional Council did a survey of inanga spawning locations in the Kaituna, and the shoreline of this piece of land was one of the places where that spawning was observed happening.
Mm.
They got their own boat route.
Your Bell Street. Can you go back to the, oh, what's it? Oh, yeah, even that one there. Oh, that'll do. You see where that land is, and then across the other side of the river, that's the wetland that we're currently involved with, the Paureto and developing all that wetland on that side. So you can kind of see the connectivity with having a wetland on this side, and then it'll go into the larger one. So that large one on the other side is that 100 hectares that we've proposed. So we'll pretty much hit that target. And so I suppose it just shows the proximity to where this block is.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think it's quite, to Taru here, it's quite obvious. You can see the connection, the interconnectedness between both sides of the river, and given its cultural value as well, I think it's, you know, I would total what Nikki has said. Sounds like a really good project.
Well, I'll take that as a yes, that we'll start to possibly approach the funding organisations and that, and see where we get to, eh?
Yeah, it'd be good, Mr. Chair. I think it's good to actually understand the block, you know, and obviously as you go through your negotiations or your discussions, all that'll come out. And but I think just on the face of it, looking at it now and hearing the views, that it looks like a really, really good project. So yeah, it has my support for it.
Yeah. So Tapu made an approach to Regional Council around purchasing this block, but I don't think Regional Council just purchased blocks, but of land. However, I think through our project on the Kaituna, we were able to probably justify it as part of our restoration of wetlands and that in the area. So thank you, everyone.
Dean.
Yeah.
Just I pulled up a on a Google search a Kaituna River document, but it refers to Te Karaka Pa. Is that the site of the actual Te Karaka Pa?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at in the video, yeah.
Ka kite e hoa, ka kite koutou.
Ka kite
That
Niki.
was the actual Pa site.
Yes, yeah, outside.
Okay.
Well, different tribes have different history to it, but Kapi the Waipa, Ngāti Te Haue, Ngāti Pūkiri, and Ngā Pūtiki. Yeah, so it goes way back to those times. Yeah. But it was one of those common paths when travelling through the coastline, there was a place to stop. Yeah, you replenish. Moana, can you take over the chair? You start from, because Nikki's gone, if you can see us through the rest of the meeting.
We're up to the minutes now. So I'm going to go 7.1.
Councillor McDonald's going to take over the chair.
So we need to do that. We're here. So where are we going to put that?
Should we do minutes?
Yeah, I'll do the minutes to do that, and then I'll follow that. Okay, everybody, we're going to go to our previous minutes, which are on page, when I get there, of your agenda. Page over there. So, just what page are we over there? Minutes?
Page 96. Page 96.
Page 96 of your agenda for our minutes. I'm going to take the minutes as read. Are there any matters arising on the minutes?
No. Oh. Oh, this was around drainage, wasn't it? Yeah. Madam Chair, just in regards to the point, I was asked to talk with Dr. Kura Bird in regards to some of the drainage issues around for the Kaituna River, and it was quite specifically in the area where Tūpourangi Marae is. So spoke to her, and because Tūpourangi Marae are going through a rebuild, I think she actually went to speak to Reverend Maru and the committee around that. So that was achieved.
So is there an expected report once she's had that meeting with them, or was your role just to make the connection?
Just to make the connection, and I think it was for her to just indicate that there's a potential erosion possibility around the road here and to the Marae.
Thank you. Any other matters by the members? Or staff. Can I have a mover for these minutes, please?
I'll move.
And a seconder? Rawiri, okay, thank you. That's moved by Dean, second by Rawiri. Thank you. All in favour? I will take that as a yes, everybody nodding.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to an item around the committee membership and TCC Commission, which I understand you're going to speak to, Pim.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. Just very briefly, so we're jumping back to page 17 in your agenda paper, committee membership update. It's, as I understand it, recommendation 2 isn't ready for consideration because that matter has not been resolved at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm still undergoing discussions with Waitaha and Tapuika and just trying to formalise the letter and get that to the appropriate body. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
So Jess, I'm not sure whether we do we defer that recommendation or do we
we can
just
follow up report again when the letter is ready.
we just delete it from this meeting?
Just because the third recommendation still stands that there's the TCC Commission coming.
Okay. Thank you, Pim. So what we're going to do is refer this decision to a later meeting and come back with a report as well, my understanding.
We could request a further report on the Tapuika Waitaha seat and still receive this report and notes the TCC Commission.
Yeah, so there's 2 separate matters being updated in this report. The first is around the vacant jointly held seat between Waitaha and Tapuika. There were indications that might have had an appointment ready for today's hui, but unfortunately not quite. So we look forward to that being filled at the next hui. The second part of it is obviously everyone will be familiar with the Tauranga City Council situation where 4 commissioners have been appointed by the Minister of Local Government. The role that Tauranga City Council plays in committees such as this one, joint council committees, is unclear. And given that there's only 4 commissioners, they might be stretched to represent themselves at that governance level on all of the bodies. So we'll wait feedback from them. But the recommendations to you all is just that you receive this report and that you note Tauranga City Council's situation with commissioners now in place.
Okay, we need somebody to remove the receipt of our reports. I'm going to look at the screen for hands. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Jane.
Jane can't second at the moment.
Oh, second.
So we had moved by Nick and seconded by
Jane can't.
Oh, sorry, Jane. I've got to take Dean as a seconder. Okay, that was for number 1, 2, and 3. We're going to reserve our decision on that for at a later date when we've got more information. Thank you. Verbal updates and updates from our members. So we're not going to get from TCC. So I'll hand over to Western Bay. Is that Peter specifically? Or
It's only a day.
Okay.
Just ask if anyone wishes to.
I thought they had a presentation.
At the table.
You do. This is just members, members updates.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Daly should be responding to that, but why not?
Okay, well, I'll just return to the members if members have got any updates before I move back to you, Peter, for your presentation.
Yeah, cool.
No, it doesn't appear to be. Thank you. And our next item is a presentation of the Aysbury Ford Road concept plan process, which I'll hand to you, Peter, Royston Bay.
Yep. Cool. Thank you, Matamwana. So we've shared our screen, so you should be able to see the presentation on the screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. So yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to give you another update of how we're progressing with 83 Ford Road and where we're at. Oh,
Can we go on to the next slide, please?
Jessica, you got it. Okay, yeah, thanks. Just by way of background, the council acquired the land back in June 2016 for community use. It was used for the Kaituna River Diversion Project, and we did do an update when we went into not long after lockdown last year. We gave an update on the concept plan process, which is what we're bringing back to you today. Next slide, thanks. Yeah, so we undertook some pre-engagement during the 27th of August and 8th of September. We had an open day on the 3rd of September and got a good turnout to that. So the top 3 current activities for the site is boating's obviously very high on the agenda here, and fishing and swimming. And the top 3 groups that were representative in the initial feedback was Makatu Coast Guard, and there was people wanting to see the areas updated, and also some good feedback about having the site as a community hub learning centre. Yeah. So when we took the pre-engagement feedback, we've put that all into a concept plan. We've tried to wrap all that up and represent everyone's submissions and what they're after. But the main user groups, as you can see there, we've included as Makatu Coast Guard, Makatu Hoi Waka, cyclists and boaties. What was really key in the preliminary feedback is location access to Kaituna is very important for these groups, and clearly they're associated with the awa as well. There are plans for future connection to cycleway across regional council land back up towards the wetlands that Chairman Flavor was just referring to. And also that ties in with the earlier discussion in the hui today about recreation activities in that space. The site also allows bits of space here for future events and make it as a place for people to come to and connect and enjoy the environments. So, next. Yeah, so continuing on there, there's opportunities. We have around, I guess, 3 sides of the whenua there. There is waterways. So there's opportunities to do environmental enhancement, planting, to, I guess, filter and make the water a bit better before it enters into those waterways. Whenua, hara and te reo signage, that came through quite strong, and that's been reflected in the concept plan for the opportunities there as well. Yeah, I guess the site enhances pedestrian cyclist connection too, and review the river environment. So what we did what we called a flow diagram through the park, first of all, through the area, and looked at what likely traffic movement we'd get. Because with the car park being on the western side, when the boat trailer car park fills up, people are going to go through on the top of the stop bank. Another thing we focused on too from some of the feedback is that the marae area, the grassed area in front of the wharanui out there, everyone drove their vehicles down across that and parked in that area, and we thought there'd be a better connection and protection of that area, the marae area, and connected to the, yeah, so just looking through the plan there now.
Oh.
Yeah, very good. So you can see how we've realigned in the plan there. So we're just going down in our proposal, statement of proposal that we're reporting out to council in a couple of weeks' time. We've got all the rationale and feedback behind the various items on the key you can see on the plan here. So on the left-hand side, you've got that key, identifying all those features. So there's other, I guess, text and video reflecting what those things are. But you see, if I start from the top left-hand side of the plan, work down. So that's showing a connection off to a cycleway linking off along the stop bank. Then you come down and there's overflow car parking there in that main area there. That when the boat car park gets full, you can go there. But the Waka Armour station there too, and they go in the area, and you can see further down a little bit that connects across over the stop bank and provides a Waka, I guess, launching facilities to facilitate easier access to the awa there. And moving along, we've got it's quite a bit of requests for public toilets. Oops, no, sorry. I was moving along on the presentation slide. Yeah, so down the bottom left-hand side of that picture, you can see some wetland area and a bit of opportunity to walk around there. That's a bit of an overland flow path into one of the canals as well. And you see the big green space in the area that gives flexibility to the site. It becomes like the heart of the site as well. And there's some car parking that services that there and also services people attending any function at the Wharanui. You see a semicircle thing just on the bottom side of the stop bank driveway going through. What we've done there is proposing to raise the area, because when you're on site, there's about a 2-3 metre wide strip with the stop anchors, and then you have to drop back down to the river when you can't see anything else, or if you drop back down to the other side, you can't see the river. So by creating an open space up there, people can gather and get the benefits of viewing the river environments and back to Te Puke and the hills, and also the overlooking the open space and the green area. Okay, so the other key thing is keeping the Wharanui and looking at potential options for that. That's all yet to be determined. But the Coast Guard on the bottom right-hand side of the concept plan is brown building there. It's the car park, and that's proposed where the Coast Guard would like to go. That gives them alignment down to their existing boat and out to the, can get a line of sight down to the Kaituna river mouth as well. And obviously the existing boat and trailer parking is there, and an existing boat ramps here. So that's pretty much the concept plan we've come to in a draft form as a result of the pre-engagement feedback. So we like to think we've reflected a lot of what feedback is. I guess the test will be when we put it out for formal consultation. So next slide, thanks. Another key thing that came back was the name of the site. Obviously, it's been referred to in our box as a 83 Ford Road. Through some of the deeper investigation and stuff, we understand that Otai Paria is historically the name being used, and so we're proposing the name change to the whenua to reflect that historic name there, and undertake that through the formal consultation engagement process that we will set out to do. Next slide. So the next steps is going here. So on the 18th of February, Council's Policy Committee will be sending a full report in the public section of the meeting, and they'll have a statement of proposal in the draft plan. So the proposed consultation at this point in time is on Monday 12th of April through to 12th of May. Formal consultation, feedback. We'll have feedback through online, drop-in days, written stuff. There's a whole lot of ways of doing that. We'll have an open day on Saturday the 1st of May for people to come in and learn more about the place, and we hope to see some of you there. And we're talking to Coast Guard and Makatū, we're welcome to do some demonstrations to make it a bit more interactive and get people along. Funding-wise, to implement all of the things we've identified in the draft concept plan, we've identified funding in our long-term plan to help implement that strategy. Yeah, so potentially all going well, we're looking at in July to formally adopt the concept plan. So any questions?
Well done, Peter and Matt. Awesome.
Yeah, no questions, but yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. While you were presenting, I did kind of whisper to and ask Dean who were the tangata whenua involved in this project. So, yeah, I don't know whether Dean wants to share or whether you just want to confirm for our interest, Peter, of who you engaged with at tangata whenua to get to this stage of that project.
We've relied on our Takawanga team of Petra and Chris to guide us in there, and there's quite a few interests in there, so look, I don't have all the names in front of me at the moment, sorry, otherwise.
Okay, well, I might get just Dean to share what he shared with me.
I think overall the name or Taiparia is the correct name. So I mean that's great to be able to make that name change for the area. I mean up to date we always just call it Boy Corbett's place.
Yeah.
Or 83 years. So it's good to actually apply the traditional name. I think during the works down there was an excavation of the archaeological content of the area, and I know all the iwi were all involved with that. So that's Tapuita Waitaha, Ngāti Whakaue, Rangi Wewe, Ngāti Pikiao. So it's a really good connection, and Te Maru obviously had been in the background helping to push this along. But I think it's a shame Te Taru White isn't still with us, because at one of the Te Maru meetings he pushed the idea that it's that place where all of us as children we've either been there, we've fished there, but we go there because it's a place we've been growing up around. And so to have it kind of designed in what you're proposing here, I think is fantastic. And so it should have, like I think the diversion wall, it would have the same type of support from Tangata Whenua. So I suppose just well done. Mr. Bate, Pete and Matt and you guys who have worked on this.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Any of the other members wish to comment? Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Keep up the good work, Western Bay. Okay, thank you. We'll go to our next report. Kaituna Mole Maintenance, which is on page 97. And it's going to be presented by you, Brad. Kia ora.
You're on mute,
Hey
Brad.
everyone. Yep. Yeah, sorry, it was a little issue with my headset. Afternoon, everyone. So it's just going to run you through some planned maintenance works we're going to be doing on the Kaituna Mole. I haven't shared a screen in a Zoom call before, but I think it'd be easiest if I present. If I put that up and then share it. Let's see. Windows. Sorry, I'm just trying to bring up. There we go. Just a image. So you guys are all familiar with the Kaituna Mole structure out at the end of the cut. And as many of you may have noticed, there's been quite a bit of deterioration around the sheet piling that holds that structure in place. So under our existing consent to operate that structure, we're just going to be carrying out some renewal of the sheet piling face around the mole. The works are basically planned for this financial year, probably starting towards the end of April. We've developed sort of a project plan and community and communications plan that we're going to be rolling out starting this month, with the works to start in April. And just in terms of background, the works were planned previously, but with the government's shovel-ready scheme coming into place, just as an FYI, we've managed to source some central government shovel-ready funds to support this project. So the works is primarily a sheet piling operation. So the sheet piling face around the outside is, well, effectively failing. We're going to be driving some new sheet piles around it and coating them with on a technical side, just coating them with some sort of protective coating, just to extend that lifespan, to hopefully reduce the periods between maintenance works. As part of the structure, just to increase its integrity, we're going to be doing a capping slab across the top, which is this concrete you can see on the image in front of you. And that's going to have some landscaping and architectural features with benches and railings and rod holsters and the rest of it for the recreational use of the area. So while we're out there just to renew the face of the sheet piles and do a structural slab tie-in, we're just trying to make it a bit more user-friendly for the recreation that goes on at the end of the mole there. The works, as I said, are planned for April. We're trying to limit effects on the public and trying to keep it out of the peak recreational use area of summer. So we're aiming to complete the works this winter. And there's a rest of details around the background and exact sheet pile lengths and the rest of it that will be going in that report. But mainly as an FYI, I think I've covered the key points and just curious if you guys have any questions.
Kia ora, Brad, Dean here. So I understand that it's predominantly sheet piling and that to strengthen the base and that. Just wondering, with the conceptual picture that I'm looking at, did you engage, I suppose, with fishermen? I'm just wondering how high that fence is and whether they can cast over that or those sorts of things. Yeah.
So just to limit the amount of issues we would have in terms of engagement and consenting issues, it's a like-for-like replacement. So the sheet piles are being placed directly around the old ones. The railing specification is basically to meet an upgraded, more structural version of what's in place. So there will be limited difference in terms of that, even down to where the visual Coast Guard pole currently is. It'll be back in the same place to limit any sort of change of effects. We will be adding some rod holsters and sort of concrete areas for the fishermen to use in terms of their equipment and their fishing practices and stuff to make it a bit more user friendly. We did engage with the community board and some locals. We have a communications plan commencing this February, which will be signage at the mole of what we're planning, as well as some flyer handouts to the fishermen. And these minor details of the recreational and sort of surface aspects can be updated through the procedure with that feedback that we get this February, March.
Great. Thank you.
Dean, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Matamana. Oh, you're still in charge. The document, the report in the agenda, you talk about supporting the following projects, including Project 12, the Cycleway Walkway project. Can you say how what you've incorporated to support that?
So it's still at a very high level of terms that obviously we're just trying to increase the use of the area and make it more user friendly. So just to encourage it as a destination, to encourage the transport along that coastal access way. This is sort of work that has to take place for structural reasons, but while we're doing that, we're trying to make it as an actual destination that could be used and linked up to the other parks that are being created along this whole area. So it's not a specific project that is going to enable, for example, a cycleway on it or connected to it. You're probably not likely to ride out there with your fishing gear, but it's we are just to give you a perspective, in this gap over here, there's going to be special accesses down to the beach. And there is a phase 2 that is currently at a high level in terms of consultation with Western Bay and other groups in terms of the renewal of this car parking and recreational area behind it to, again, improve the access and use of the area, to link it up in terms of community connection and the coastal park area.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking ultimately as the cycle trail is developed down the stock bank, there will be a lot more cyclists just cycling down to have a look, not necessarily to go fishing, but to go for a walk on the beach and walk around the mole. And so
the
cycle parking provisions might be an idea.
Yeah, so we've just literally this morning sent through a request to some consultants to work on the preliminary design of this car parking area behind it. Consent will be required and a whole lot of other steps. So it's really at the early stages, but we have got preliminary feedback from Western Bay, from their assets and roading department, as well as from their parks and reserves department, and that's been incorporated. And one of the requests was bus parking, larger vehicle parking, as well as bike racks. So that's been included in the discussion that's gone through to our consultants for the preliminary stages. So there is a bike rack kind of aspect being included.
I think that's fantastic, and the obviously the sandblasted designs on there. It may be worth getting some feedback through Dean, perhaps, and in terms of graphic designs that are more reflective of the iwi hapu and culture, etc., of the local area.
Yep. So currently that's going down in our technical specification as a to be determined effectively. We're putting a provisional sum, not an exact design that needs to be done. We were waiting on finalization of the benches and bench placement, and that will allow us to then have a finalized surface that then can be designed onto.
Okay, and just for as an example, if you take a look at the Taupo cycleway out to 5 Mile Bay, I think there's lots of interesting examples there, and even history signboards is another opportunity to talk about the area and the history, etc.
Yeah, so I don't have I've only got working sketches currently of this this parking and recreational use area behind here, but part of that upgrade is, as I said, parking, some recreational facilities, but also connectivity to the dune areas and sort of formalized areas where parking is more defined using paving patterns, but then also defining access down to the dune areas, down to the beach areas. And obviously we've discussed that those would be good locations for signage, either if it's heading towards the dunes about ecology, if it's heading towards the sea, possibly cultural or historical signage in relation to those two areas. So that's been raised as being merged into those two access points, right where the pedestrian uses are sort of most likely to engage in it.
Probably a big ask with all these requests, but you do seem to have a large amount of money from central government there.
I think some signs probably won't be the highest cost in terms of the total project.
Tēnā koe mate moana, he pātai tāku, I've got a question.
Yes.
Kia ora, Brad. Just a question around rubbish and littering in the area. I know that over summer it was becoming quite an issue, in particular with people going out there and drinking in the evenings, and in the morning there being a number of bottles, cigarette butts and all sorts left behind. I'm just wondering if you're going to incorporate, I don't know if rubbish bins are the best option because it does encourage littering, but just sort of how we can ensure that the environment's not polluted through use as well.
So that's going to come down to an actual use and maintenance aspect, which is on the table for discussion with Western Bay's representatives once we have a preliminary design to propose to them. This rear access area here is mostly where the bins and utilities would be installed. Currently, there are some bins that we're looking at refitting for them when we do the paving upgrade in this area. Again, this is all phase 2 at a high level. We're getting a preliminary plan in terms of, from some landscapers in terms of recreational use flows and movements and linking up bins, toilets, and the actual primary use of the mole and linking those up to make them as user-friendly as possible. We're then obviously going to have to then refer back to Western Bay because it'll be their ongoing maintenance kind of issues in terms of their operations. We're going to provide the asset facility with the idea of handing it over. And I had these preliminary discussions with, I think it was Sue Hammond and one or two others on behalf of Peter. So I don't have any specifics around that. Our idea is to come up with a user-friendly plan and then have those discussions once we have that initial plan.
Madam Chair. Brad, just through Madam Chair, just a tack on, I suppose, to Grant's conversation for the aesthetics, maybe some sort of a sculpted piece at the see there where you've got the ramp and the steps, maybe in that area there.
Oh, yeah.
For inclusion.
Yeah, so I don't see a sculpted piece raising any major issues in terms of our consent. As I just said, we are doing as much of a like-for-like replacement as we can. There is a phase 2 that's going to incorporate that landscaped design and general aesthetics. So more likely that would then fall under that scope, to make sure it fits with what comes next, rather than doing it at the same time as the mole when we don't have a clear idea of what's going to be taking place in that sort of recreational area behind it. Okay. But yeah, I'll definitely add that onto the list of landscaping issues that we're busy working through.
I have a question, Brad. Given the previous presentation by the Western Bay Plenty District Council, are we having discussions with them too of synchronising what we're doing in both projects in that one area?
We are having discussions in terms of our timelines, and I was aware that they were planning that project at 83 Ford Road. I forget the new naming that has been used, but it was more in terms of coordinating from a physical work side that we could get in and do the mall while using that 83 site as possibly temporary site yardage. I think that's the site we're talking about. And in terms of aspects like that kind of crossover, I'm not too sure what else kind of coordination would need, because I'm again just assuming that Western Bay's project will have a slightly longer timeline. We're looking at closing up both phase 1 and 2 of this mall by the end of this year, mainly because we're sort of on we have those funding requirements that we have to sort of start work as soon as possible, as well as the structural issues of wanting to get the mall back up and running. But no, haven't had any specific tie-in between the two projects.
Okay.
I don't know if Peter wants to give any additional information on that.
Peter, have you got any comments? I'm only asking the question because we've just seen 2 projects presented to us that are both in Maketū. And I guess my question is around, do we look at any type of synergy and connection between the 2 sites when you're developing them?
Yes, to you, Manawana. Yeah, so we're quite conscious that, or prior to the river diversion works and the work that's been going to be down at the mole, that this was a very, very popular recreation area. We get people from Rotorua coming over and the locals, and it's getting more popular. And we're trying to put these design elements in place to anticipate and meet the needs of those people coming through, because the usage is just going to increase over time. We just know it is as our population grows. So yeah, there is not exactly a coordination on the timing of the physical works. I think Pim Ridgely would like to have seen the mole done at the same time we had it closed down for the river diversion project, but that didn't eventuate. But we've got the funding now that Brad's got, so we're working with him on coordinating the mole work with the adjoining environments, being our car park and toilets, and getting some tree planting there for shade and stuff for the future as well. So we are working in that space together. With regards to Taiparia, that's going to be the funding has to go through the long-term plan process. So all going well, that will be July this year. Before we had any funding to even start doing design works and looking at construction works, and probably this time next year in that space here. So it's going to be a good year apart on the 2 projects, I guess. But just to help with Tania too, we are very conscious that the usage is increasing, and we're looking at our levels of service with regards to collecting, having bins down there and collecting rubbish. We are a little bit reluctant sometimes to put bins in more remote places. We do get people doing what we call fly tipping out here in domestic waste, but I think that's going to happen anyway, so it's best to try and manage it as best we can. So we will be increasing the level of service in line with the mole improvements and also with what we deliver at Taiparia.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions to Brad? Well, I can see somebody's hand. Is there somebody? No questions. Oh, sorry, I thought I saw somebody's hand. Okay. Can I have a mover for that report, please? A mover and seconder.
I'll move.
Move. Dean's move, a seconder.
Grant second.
And Grant second. Thank you.
To you, Madam Chair, Madam, I'm just giving the courtesy that Matt and I need to attend another meeting, so we need to leave the hui now. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
your report.
Thanks, guys.
We're now moving to our last report, actually. Our last report on page 101 and on the Toi Moana Kaituna Catchment Report on operations since 28th August 2020. And I'll hand over to you, Pam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. I'll take the report as read. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I can take you through the highlights if you like, but I see that we are slowly dwindling in numbers and lunch is sitting on the table here, at least in Tauranga. So
quickly through the highlights then, Pam.
Very quickly or not? Yes? Okay. Well, so there's the table on page 103 of your agenda, which shows you the consents that have been granted by the Regional Council. Just of interest. The maritime item, 2.2 on that same page, I'd just like to bring members' attention to the fact that there will be a hui at Tia Marae next week at the request of Tapuika because of concern about the speed at which some jet boat and jet ski operators are passing people on rafts and swimming in the river. And I think the Harbour Master will be fronting with a couple of team members. They've secured an additional budget to ramp up controls, and they're looking at what else they can do in terms of signage and or cameras to try and make sure that the various recreational users on the river are compatible with each other. I won't go through the next bit because it's a bit detailed. There's some nice pictures of the second phase of Te Pourepu or Kaituna wetland creation on page 104. And 105 shows you the types of environments that will be created on that land in coming months. The earthworks is almost all complete there for the season. So we're expecting another, I'll just forget the number, but it's thousands of plants going in there this winter again. There'll be some opportunities for people to get involved.
Quick question, who's Courtney replacement?
Well, we haven't done a like-for-like replacement, so we have Courtney. Just so that everybody knows, Courtney Bell was due to have her first baby on the 28th of January, but it's still in there. So she'll be looking forward to becoming a mum very shortly. The various projects that she's working on have been divvied up amongst different staff. So we have Mike Tyler taking over Te Pourepu or Kaituna. We have Hayden Schick looking after Papamua Hills, and Paul Greenshields is doing some of the sort of senior projects and program work that she was responsible for. Yeah. That piece on page 107 talks a little bit about the Ford Road Pump Station upgrade project, which has been on a slow burn for a long time. Any questions on that, I can bring back to Kathy Thiel-Larden. And other than that, there's some items there at the back about the flood repair program. Just while I talk about the flood repair program, there has been a couple of occasions this season where rock work has been undertaken and it's met with opposition from tangata whenua, particularly in Tapuika's rohe. And so Arthur Rangihika and his crew have been working with Vance Scudder and Ashley Beale and a few others on what kind of process we can use to make sure that the planned works are notified and discussed well in advance so that there aren't those kinds of surprises. Because it's always better to work these things out through dialogue early rather than, the rock turning up and someone being surprised by the fact that the rock's turning up. So I think part of the reason for the issues there are that there was a little bit of a period between Hohepa Maxwell's role being filled and Vance sort of taking over and having that fully in place with all the operational arms of council. So I'll leave it there, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Pim?
Yes, please.
Grant.
Pim, I did, Matt had asked me to ask a question about the issue with the jet skis and swimmers at Waitangi, but what is the date of that hui? Is that an open invitation to members of the public? Or?
Yes, I believe so. It's on Thursday next week. So what will that be, the 11th? I can ask for the date and time and venue to be circulated to members if you like. Jess, are you happy to follow that up through John Peters in the Harbour Masters team?
Okay, that's great. I see you've got a report on AFCO resource consent. I had heard something, but I'm not 100% sure of the details. Were they looking at a variation to their resource consent, or they're just adding in the water take thing?
Yeah, good question. So they have heard and read the feedback and submissions from Te Maru and the various entities that did submit. They're still sort of, I guess, finalising their response to those submissions, and the agreement with the consents officer is that while they're finalising that, they're also finalising their application to take, so that all of their resource consents are considered at the same time, rather than having a hearing for 4 of them and then another process happening in a year's time. So do you want me to provide any feedback to our consents team on that timing? I don't think it's being stalled for the sake of stalling. I think it's just trying to get all the applications heard at the same time, rather than having, a hearing now for those discharge consents and then another hearing later for the abstraction consent.
Yeah, no, that's right. I can't even remember where I heard something about it, but I raised it with Matt and he wasn't aware of anything either. So it was just really find out what was happening, really.
I'll get an update from Marlene Bosch and circulate that to the members as well about likely time.
Okay. Just while I've got you there, I took a phone call a bit earlier, but did we go around the table with updates, or
yeah, we did that
in the meeting? Oh, okay. Sorry, because I did have a few points I wanted to add. Was it too late for that, or?
No, you've got the floor, so we can let you go.
Okay. Basically, Western or council staff, which includes, I think, well, just as a quick update, regional council have been doing a investigation of all the marae across the district as regards to their wastewater needs, and all the marae have been assessed on the western side of the district, and I understand this is now kicking off for the eastern side of the district. So just basically to look at their on-site and reticulation options, and because with the Three Waters government funding that's come in, Western Bay is using some of that funding to upgrade marae wastewater needs. So obviously we don't know the full picture of the eastern marae at this stage, but that investigation will inform us as to possible upgrades that could be done out this way, and that's in addition to what's already been identified with Makahe, and I think that's the main one that there's proposals on the table for. But I know some of the other marae are interested in some improvements. The cycleway, there's Western Bay's identified a cycleway between Te Puke and Rangiru Business Park. At this stage, the preference is to use the rail corridor, and the council senior staff have been working with tangata whenua to work through the implications of that. And there was a meeting, in fact, last week, and council staff have been invited to speak at Moko Marae in the near future. So, and it's also been, it appears that the route for the cycleway along the rail corridor may be the route for the wastewater pipe from Rangiru Business Park to the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant as well. So that's the end of my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant. Just the update on the Osset Marae project that Regional Council had initiated. Hey, big congratulations to Western Bay. Regional Council has now given the lead position in that project to the Western Bay, and I understand that Regional Council will continue to support the project, and I understand that there's going to be a, how do I put it? There's going to be some amendment around the fee structure that involves Regional Council in that whole process, consenting process. And I think that's going to be part of the way that it supports, given that the headway that Western Bay has made to progress that a lot sooner than Regional Council. So thank you for the report.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate that feedback because I know the Te Puke Marae have been a bit concerned that, you know, the western side have all been identified and projects initiated, but we really need to get our ones underway so that we can, you know, make the most of what the government's offered.
Thank you. Oh. Can I just have a mover and seconder, please, for Pim's report, that final report?
I'll move.
Dean will move, seconded by Zawadi. Thank you. Now that was our last report.
General business items. This is here, on the screen.
Oh, general business items. I've just been handed a little slip. Which gives me great pleasure to allude my friends. Beautiful face I just recognised on the screen. I handed a little note to Dean to say, what's Nikiti doing up there? Tēnā koe e hoa. Great to see you. So I've been asked, I don't know, I suppose everybody else can see Nikiti on the screen, and to acknowledge your presence amongst us today and to welcome you to Te Maru o Kaituna, our forum. And I'm just going to hand over to you briefly, Nikiti, to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and I guess just some history, because you've worked with probably a lot of us around this table already, and it's lovely to see your face and that you'll be joining us wearing a niwa hat. Kia ora e hoa.
Tēnā koe tuahine. Korua tahi ko, kia koe hoki e te tungane e tīn. Nō reira e mihi. E mihi mai a taihoro nukurangi, pērā te tikanga o te kaupapa te maru I raro e au hei tēnei wā, a taihoro nukurangi, a niwa. E mihi atu kia koutou ngā kaunihera, koutou ngā tangata hei rongo, koutou ngā tangata hei mahi āringa. Nō reira e mihi. Me hoki au ki te reo I tango whenua me ki. Kei waitangi ahau e tēnei wā. O waitangi. Nō reira, moi mai ngā āhuatanga, e tu mai rā te kaupapa, te haki me te tiriti, wā ki tonu atu, tēnā koutou. My name's Nikiti Tōtaua, and so that my sister Mate and Dean can catch up, I've gone from destruction and devastation to recreating and nurturing. So I now work for Niwa Korua. And I believe at one time, Mati, you stole a taonga from me, and his name is Tuana Kuka. And as the treaty says, you can have him, but not for keeps. And now we have him back with us. So I promise you, Mati, and then we will look after him, even though he belongs to your side of the coast. I'm being brought on board, and I'll let my team introduce themselves. But I'm a Pauarihi for Niwa, so I cover from the central area of the North Island all the way up to the Bay of Islands, going up the east and west coast. And it is with good fortune that you fall into my my kono, my whāriki nureira, tēnā koutou. Scotty, Das?
Tēnā koutou. I understand that we are standing between you guys and your lunch, and you've probably had a really long hui, so we'll try and be really brief. Pōwai tēnei, ko tāsa rika tōku ingoa, he kākano I ruia mai I karioi maunga, me takoto ana I te taha moana o whaingaroa, e ngunguru te ao I te pō. He whonga tāku ki Ngāti Kuata me Ngāti Parau Hoki. And I'm the group manager here at Niwa in Hamilton for the Māori Environmental Research Team. So kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Scott Stevens tapo ingoa. I am a researcher here in Niwa, Hamilton. Been here for 20 years, and my specialty is on coastal sea level rise and its impacts. And so we're hoping to talk to you a little bit today about some of that, some mahi land. So can I share, we'll try and go through pretty quick, but I'll just share what we, if I can.
So maybe I'll just kick off. Probably everybody in the room is familiar on what Niwa is, but we're one of the, a CRI, one of the Crown Research Institutes, and we focus on all things to do with water and atmosphere. So ki runga, ki raro, ki wainganui, everything to do with water. And so as part of our kind of core business, we obviously do consultancy work for people like Bay of Plenty Regional Council, regional council, central government. We also have some kind of centrally funded money that we get from the government, and then we also buy into contestable funding every year. So MB or the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, they have a central pool of science funding that we all kind of bid into for the year. And this is kind of, can you guys see on your screen the presentation now?
Yes.
Cool, kia ora. So just to let you guys know, so yeah, we bid into this pool of money annually. It's a multi-million-dollar pool of putia, and usually it's for long-term projects, so kind of 4 to 5 year research programs. And this is the package of research proposals that Niwa are putting in this year. It's always a terrible timing when these research proposals are due, so we develop them over the summer when everybody's off having holidays and we're busy in the office writing proposals. But the proposals are due internally at Niwa at the end of February, so we haven't got much time, and they're due into MB at the start of March. But the proposal that we wanted to have a kōrero with you guys about was that number 3, which is one that we're putting together around sea level rise and the impact of sea level rise on coastal lowlines. And in some of our conversations that we've had with the Regional Council, we thought that this kaupapa might align potentially with the objectives of the Ropu, and just wanted to have a kōrero today to tell you what we're up to and to see if there's any alignment with your priorities and if there might be any opportunities to collaborate.
Yeah, so I mean, this is this slide here sort of gives a bit of a picture about some of the issues that are going on in our coastal lowlands. So when we talk about the coastal lowlands, we're talking about these flat, low-lying land or plains which are adjacent to the coasts and estuaries, and we sort of generally low relief, and they've got the sea on one end and the hills on the other, and of course they're really popular for many things. So because they're often very fertile and flat, So you've got all these competing things going on. So you've got your farms and your productive land in there. You've got some highly populated. There's rivers feeding the lowlands and dams in the hills, and they often cut off the sediment supply, which means that the land can't adjust. And you've got, on top of all this, you've got the natural environment that remains, the wetlands, and then you've got the threat of sea level rise. So what our mahi is about is really looking at the impacts of that sea level rise, and we want to focus on the wetlands in particular, because there's a lot of research that's been done on the built environment, the towns, cities, and what's going to happen to them, but there's a bit of a gap around what's actually going to happen to our natural environments. And so we want to do some work on that, and with a bit of a rural focus. And one of the challenges for our natural environments is this idea called coastal squeeze, because if there was nothing else there, then as the sea level comes up, then our coastal wetlands might actually migrate with the sea level rising. But where we've built things, put things in the way, for example, a stock bank and with a farm in behind it, that habitat then will become squeezed in the future. And also there's natural squeezing where our lowlands run up against hills. So what we're sort of proposing with our work is some research that comes across three sections, if you like. So the first section on the bottom left there is to look at what's actually exposed to things. So there we would look at where are the wetlands and the productive land, and then we need to actually do some work on what's actually going to happen to the water systems. Where is the groundwater going to get up to? How will salinisation come inshore? Because we presently don't have a tool to do that easily in New Zealand. So we'll address that. And then we'll use those to look at what's actually going to happen to those natural habitats and where do all those things intersect in space. Where are the problem areas? Where are the opportunities? And so then we'll go, once we've done that, we'll go over to the right into the yellow box, and we'll look at what are some of the consequences of rising seas, and then the threats, but also the opportunities, things that we can exploit and do better. So, for example, where will the wetlands be a threat, but also where are the spaces where if we did something different with our land use, we could actually recreate these natural environments. And one of the problems in telling that story and making things happen is that we haven't had good ways for the natural systems to speak against the monetary, the highly monetary values. So in our research, we're going to look quite closely at how we're going to develop some ways to value the non-commercial things and actually build those into some of the economic models. And so we can start to address things not just about the economy, but also the environment, the social and cultural considerations. And we want to build in some te ao Māori perspectives into that as well. And then finally, our third sort of research aim, which goes across the other two. So we're going to look at, so then we'll actually try to look at what that might look like in a planning sense. So it's all very well if you know what sea level rise is going to affect, and then what some of those consequences and opportunities, but then how do you actually make the change going forwards? And so we're going to address some of the barriers to that presently exist. And one of the things that we're going to do is look at the challenge of people not being able to visualize what the future looks like. We're going to do develop some behavioral models through using serious games, and then develop like a virtual reality policy environment so people can play with different choices that might be made. For example, if we didn't allow any more development of our coastal lowlands, and converted it all naturally, what might that actually look like in the future if we just went on as what we're doing now, and what might that look like. And then we'll do some work around actually some case studies around building some of the tools that we've developed into some dynamic adaptive plans. And yeah, so I think that's probably, hopefully that's makes sense. But those are our ideas. So I guess we're interested to know if you know how that sounds to you, and then whether we could explore some areas of possible alignment going forwards. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Yeah, through my friend Chair. Just looking at your next steps, are we interested in the scope up? I think definitely we have to be. Our document, He Taonga Tuku Iho, indicates that we are strongly supportive of the work that you've just proposed. Yeah, so thank you, Scott. Ka huri no, e taku hua e mihi mai ana ki a koe e ki pai tunu e kia kite a koe ki te mahana o te tāku e kite a koe e hoa. Ka pai. Good to see you wearing another hat. But yeah, so I think you must have a copy of our document, I suppose. This morning we've gone through the process of ratifying the document through the regional policy statement, so that's a journey in itself. I think, though, the work that you're proposing, we're definitely interested, and I think in the bigger journey that we're on for the river and its future and the catchment, and the prospect of what might happen in the future, the work that you're proposing will definitely be a chapter within the book. And so it'd be great to be part of that and have you part of us. And we're pretty much open to those types of relationships. I mean, essentially, Te Maru o Kaituna was put in place to bring people together with a common view. So, you know, that's probably what I have to say at this point. But imi mai kia koutou mā, ka tai mai nei I tēnei mo tana mai.
Any other comments from the members?
Just looking at those graphs presented by Scott, it was interesting to see the subsidence 6 to 100 millimeters per year as sea level rises. So it sort of compounds just the rising sea level. You get the land subsidence at the same time, something I hadn't really thought about, but from the point of view of the Kaituna, we've got a lot of low-lying dairy farms, you know, very close by, and already it seems that they, you know, are, well, I shouldn't comment on the viability, but as sea level rises, I guess they're going to become less and less, or more and more difficult to manage. So I'm not sure if that's, I guess that's part of the scope of your study.
It is, yes. To weigh up those different things that are in the way and the values associated with those, and then how do you balance those values in order to make decisions that will enable those lands to prosper into the future, accounting for the different types of well-being.
Yeah, and I noticed the salinisation of the aquifers, I guess, or water bores. Is that accelerate? Must be accelerated as well, is it?
It is with water abstraction, yes.
Yeah.
So we may not get into that aspect of it a lot during this particular
Yeah, is it just the diagram you had?
Salinisation of that shallow groundwater lens.
Yeah, you had a diagram showing a conical sort of intrusion. Is that just a, I don't know what causes that? Probably too technical.
No, that's from sucking up the water. So you know, if you suck up water, you pump it out of the ground, it sucks the saline water below it.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Yeah, sorry, but yeah, look forward to your findings anyway. Thanks for that.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Look, I know this is a Te Maru meeting, but I guess I just want to jump on the wagon here. You know, what you've just presented to us, and I just want to say I wear 2 other hats in Regional Council, and I'm quite interested to talk to you about doing a presentation to Komiti Māori and also to the Tauranga Moana Advisory Group, who is a precursor to the imminent co-governance that will be established once Tauranga Moana settles their treaty claim. But you know, it's of huge interest to us here, of course, in Tauranga Moana, because we're coastal, and so we're also looking at the implications of climate change for tangata whenua. So, you know, what you presented this morning to us, I can see of being huge benefit, not only for us who sit around the council table, sure, but certainly for, you know, hapu and iwi who are also being challenged in that space around what you presented, and particularly climate change, which we're already starting to see impacting on us here in the Moana, you know, right now, especially around sea level rise. So if one of you can contact me later on, and so that we can have a further discussion. Okay, and now back to the focus of Te Mari o Kaituna. I'm going to hand over to Dean, who has another part.
Yes, aloha, Mike. Darcel, I'm just wondering, in regards to, it was mentioned around tangata whenua input into the study that you're doing and that. How are you approaching that, or do you need help from us, or around maybe possible groups to talk to or be involved, or how do we be involved? How do you want us to communicate, I suppose, in the involvement?
Yeah, no, that's great. You know, obviously, we're really late in the piece now, so, you know, apologies for that. It's taken a while for NIWA to kind of land on what its 5 kind of kaupapa were that we were going to develop up into full proposals. And so I suppose at this stage in the game, it's really hard to fully co-develop something that's going to go into the proposal. But what I would suggest, if Te Maru are interested in being involved, is we could create a space whereby if we are successful with the funding, we can co-design it once the funding lands. So we can craft a space within the proposal that holds an area that says this mahi, in a broad sense, aligns with the objectives and priorities of the rōpū, and should the funding be successful, there'll be a work stream co-developed and co-designed, and depending, you know, the whānau might have their own researchers. It could be co-delivered as well in terms of any whānau on the ground that want to be active research participants in terms of leading strands of the research. So, you know, there's an opportunity there as well if there's desire from the whānau and capability and capacity to help deliver as well. But yeah, I mean, at this stage, it's really just around you know, whether or not this proposal would be supported. And also, you know, in terms of that dialogue, we can send you the final drafts of it. And, you know, if you want to input into that as well, that's fine. But yeah, unfortunately, it's pretty late in the piece to co-develop something that will actually exist in there. But definitely we can create a space for that to happen.
Would a letter of support from Te Maru be beneficial?
Absolutely. Yep, that would be absolutely that would be amazing. Yeah. And I don't think I mentioned it at the start, but it's just important to note that this contestable funding is highly contested, and there's like less than a 15% chance of us actually being successful. And so, you know, I would hope that regardless of this being successful or not, that this is the start of a conversation with Te Maru, because you know, we see this as a priority for New Zealand, and that the research, although we'll have case studies and places that we'd like to work in, the outcomes are transferable. So regardless of us getting this pool of Prutia, NIWA will be chipping away at little parts of that research through time anyway. So, you know, this is just an opportunity for us to start dialoguing, but regardless of it getting funded or not, really keen to carry on this dialogue and absolutely take up that offer to come over and have a kōrero with the komiti Māori around their research aspirations as well.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Oh, yeah. Okay, that brings us to an end to our hui today. So I'm going to hand back to Dean to close.
Kei te mihi kia koutou, taitonu kōrero kia mo te rānei. I'll just close with a simple karakia to end our hui. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa te ata pai o tō tātou āriki, ihu karaiti pe te aroha o te atua me te whiwhinga o tahitanga me te wairua, tapu, ake, amen.
Kia ora, everybody.
Ngā mihi, enjoy your guys' lunch.
Tanya, you're coming up as Tanya Capsule. Now, you're a married woman now. You still use the name Capsule.
Yeah, for now. I worked very hard to get this name and be well known, so I will remain an independent woman despite being a married woman.
Good on you.
Thank you. Great to be back again. Thank you.
Cheers.
Kia ora.